Police in China crack down on protesters as the fire seeking freedom from zero COVID norms spreads to different cities. The Chinese police and men in white hazmat suits stopped students outside the Xinhua University and other protest sites and scanned their mobile phones for pictures and information about protests. This is a violation of Chinese laws, but the surveillance state is leaving no stone unturned to crack down on protests. The volcano had been bubbling for months, and more than 2 years of intense COVID restrictions erupted after 10 people were killed in an Urumqi high-rise building fire in the restive Xinjiang province in the west. The protests have raged from Xinjiang in the west to Shanghai in the east, along Beijing, Wuhan and Chengdu. There are reports of fresh protests being reported from Xi'an in the north. These protests have been described as spontaneous, cutting across ethnic backgrounds. Han Chinese standing in solidarity with the Uyghur Muslims. Students in universities protest from Beijing to Hong Kong. Factory workers out on the streets at the Foxconn iPhone facility. Middle class leading protests in Shanghai. The protests are not restricted now to any one region. In the United States, the White House made it clear it stood for freedom for lawful assembly and peaceful protests.
Our message to peaceful protesters around the world is the same and consistent. People should be allowed the right to assemble and to peacefully protest policies or laws or dictates that they take issue with.
The world is watching closely the protests against the Chinese government's zero COVID policy. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak clarified Britain's policy with China, saying the so-called golden era of relations with China is over.
Instead of listening to their people's protests, the Chinese government has chosen to crack down further, including by assaulting a BBC journalist. The media and our parliamentarians must be able to highlight these issues without sanction, including calling out abuses in Xinjiang and the curtailment of freedom in Hong Kong.
As Britain talks of replacing wishful thinking with robust pragmatism, the world watches China use drones and technology to snoop on its citizens. Undeterred, at least for now, protesters have brought out blank A4 size white papers to register their protests against Chinese President Xi Jinping's COVID policy.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.